Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this MS Views and News Wellness Summit. All right, it's the first of its kind that we're doing in the Atlanta area. The company that sponsored today's event for the in-person aspect, and for most of it, obviously online as well, is SANDOZ Pharmaceuticals. Other than SANDOZ being our exhibitor as our primary sponsor, though, we have exhibit sponsors. We have Alexion, Banner, Life Sciences, Genentech, Horizon, Novartis, SANDOZ again, and TG Therapeutics. And we should give them all a round of applause for everything that they did, right? Dr. Megan Weigel is an advanced practice registered nurse at Baptist Health in Jacksonville, Florida. She's also a former president of the International Organization of MSRNs. She is a board member, active on MS Views and News Medical Advisory Board. And so I want to thank Megan, and she could come on up, take this microphone, and she will be speaking about integrative medicine.
Thanks, Stuart. Oh my gosh. I'm so nervous. I've spoken to like groups of 1,000 on Zoom for the past 2 years. This is my first in-person program with Stuart for a pandemic. So thank you guys for being here. I'm not really nervous. I love doing this stuff. It's great to be with Dr. Thrower. Oh, thank you. It's great to be with Dr. Thrower, and we really have a very similar philosophy of care. So several of the topics that he touched on, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail, and hopefully that answers some questions further. I like to talk about integrative medicine. Dr. Thrower talked about integrated medicine. So integrative medicine is a little bit different, and you might say, why should I care about it? And then what should I do about it? And those are the questions I hope that we can answer today. So integrative medicine is a healing-oriented medicine. And we have to think about healing not as curing. Healing as a spiritual concept says that you can heal even when a cure is not possible. And that's the basic place that I come from. Integrative medicine takes into account the whole person. So not just you and your prescription pad and where you went to physical therapy and who your primary care doctor is, but you, the person, Joe, how you feel when you wake up in the morning, what gives you meaning, what makes your heart feel good, what are your sources of support, who are your sources of support, what are your finances like, what do you need to survive? I mean, it's just this really whole person, integrative and integrated way of treating a person. It maintains that, again, healing is always possible, even when curing is not. And we don't have a cure for multiple sclerosis, but how many of you think you can live with this disease and be healed? Any hands? Awesome, that's great. So complementary and alternative medicine is different. It's not integrative medicine. It's complementary. So it's when you're using, your mainstream doctors and you're doing something else. Like I practice complementary and alternative medicine in my own healthcare. I go to my primary care doctor for my wellness checkup once a year. I see my OBGYN and I get my mammogram and my pap smear. And once a month I go to acupuncture. And when I injure myself in sports, I see my massage therapist. So that's complementary and alternative medicine. You're accessing regular medical care, and you're also doing things in addition to. Alternative medicine on its own is using a non-mainstream practice instead of conventional medicine. So this is saying, I'm not going to go to the Shepherd Center for my MS care anymore. I'm going to go try that bee sting therapy thing. That's alternative medicine. Types of complementary and alternative medicine are fairly well studied, but the United States, the Census Bureau is the organization that studies these, and they haven't done a great job since 2012. So this is an old study, but when they did the census again, I think it was in 2020, they only asked about yoga as complementary and alternative medicine. They found that a lot of people were doing it. That's great. But there are still all these other forms of complementary and alternative medicine. Natural products, using natural products, things like supplements, vitamins, minerals. I think that those things are still probably at the top of the list. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in this country. Deep breathing, various forms of movement therapy like yoga, tai chi, qigong, chiropractic and osteopathic care, naturopathic care, meditation, massage, using special diets. You can read the list here. But there are all kinds of types of complementary and alternative medicine that people use, and it's a huge industry. I don't think, I know that social media, whatever their algorithms are, they know what I'm looking at, but my Instagram feed is filled with wellness stuff. And I know that half of it is coming from people who have no real idea all of the gravity that goes into advising people about wellness. And that much of it is done just for, it's a really lucrative industry. Look at this, billions of dollars. And so, I see that this whole era of wellness and integrative medicine can be really confusing and complex for people living with chronic illnesses. In MS, 30 to 80% of people living with MS use some form of CAM. I think it's probably closer to the above 50% at this point. This is an old study as well. People are more likely to be female using complementary and alternative medicine with MS. 90% of them are also using conventional medicine, thus the complementary part, but they may not disclose what they're doing to their healthcare provider. So how many of you in the room, I know I'm not supposed to do this, Stuart, but I'm doing it anyway because it's helpful for me. How many of you in the room use some form of complementary and alternative medicine? And I'll throw out some other things out there: Reiki, prayer, hypnotism, self-hypnotism, breath work. Okay. So on Zoom, you just raise your hands too, as if you're in this room, because I just got in trouble. But I think it's important to look around and see that about 80% of you are using some type of complementary and alternative medicine. And you may not be telling your healthcare provider about it because you may not want that person to think that you might be a little wacky, right? Like, some of this stuff is a little wacky. I practice energy medicine. It's a little wacky, but it works. So I encourage you guys to talk about these things with your healthcare provider. The best part about that is that you might just find out your healthcare provider's into it. As healthcare providers, most of us work in these boxes where we practice very similarly. We work in conventional medicine. I have the benefit of having left conventional medicine for a few years and starting my practice that was purely integrative energy medicine and integrative medicine, and then seeing how absolutely necessary it was for me to go back to conventional medicine and bring that with me, not thinking it was possible before, knowing it's possible now. And so if a patient was in my exam room and said, hey, I tried this Reiki thing, what do you think of it? I'd be like, oh, really? We can talk about that, or someone might say something else, or, have you, Dr. Megan, have you ever gone to a yoga class? I really like yoga, or maybe you want to teach me something. So again, these things that you guys are doing outside of the regular exam room, I think it's important to talk about. Dr. Thrower mentioned, how do you know if something's safe? This is a little algorithm that I like to share with people. It's pretty common sense. So you want to try something. I'm going to use lion's mane as an example because I think it's a good one. People are into it. It's out there. It's easy to find. It's talked about a lot at patient programs. Is there evidence that it's helpful for MS? If yes, then does the evidence outweigh any risks, including the risk of financial harm? If yes, then go ahead and try it. Try it for 6 to 8 weeks. See if you noticed a difference in anything. If you didn't notice a difference in anything, stop it. When you stop it, did you notice that you stopped it? Because then maybe there was a little bit of a difference. And you can apply that to just about anything. And I would say that in that evidence, does the benefit outweigh the risk? You also have to consider that there is a lot of research in vitro, so basic science research about lion's mane. We know a lot about these drugs, as I'm not going to call myself an herbalist, but I'm just shy of one because of the studying that I've done. So I know that lion's mane is an antiplatelet agent. It can lower your blood sugar. It can have effects on the gastrointestinal system. So if you are on antiplatelet medications, including aspirin, including Eliquis, Pradaxa, these sorts of things, if you are on anti-diabetic medications and you start taking lion's mane without telling anybody, you could have some untoward effects. So this is another reason why it's important to let your healthcare providers know what you're doing, because all of these other things affect each other. Okay, so let's say there's no evidence, because there is no evidence, no good human evidence that lion's mane affects MS. It looks good in vitro. Like the studies that we know about it in basic science looks like it can be really helpful at decreasing tumor necrosis factor, at decreasing that inflammatory response caused by NF-kappa B. There's a lot of cool things that it does, but there isn't any evidence. The benefit probably outweighs any risk to most people, but let's say it doesn't. So then you can ask yourself, well, is there something else I could try? You know, maybe I could just try a little bit of meditation for fatigue, or maybe I could ask my doctor to measure my vitamin D level or my B12 level and see if it's high enough. Or maybe I could try some alpha lipoic acid, which I'll talk about later, because there is some data in people living with MS that it may prevent walking disability or improve walking speed in people with MS. So this is how I go through things with folks. Here's a good little graphic about the differences between conventional medicine and functional medicine. They really are at opposite ends of the spectrum from one another. Integrative medicine is kind of just to the shy of the middle there, and that is the way I choose to practice. Why should I care? All right, so Dr. Thrower talked about neuroplasticity. I'm going to touch on it briefly. There are other conditions that happen with MS. Not everyone who lives with MS just has MS. It would be great if we could all just know our lot in life was to deal with one thing, but unfortunately, that's not always our lot. So the most common comorbidities in MS are things like depression, anxiety, hypertension, high cholesterol, and chronic lung disease. Many people with MS also have other autoimmune diseases, and the most common ones are autoimmune thyroid disease and psoriasis. And then a lot of other things occur more previously than we thought. People with MS have strokes, they have heart attacks, they get seizures, they have sleep disorder, they have other mood disorders. And so why is this important? Well, there's a lot more research for integrative medicine modalities in people living with these other conditions than there are in MS. Now, I'm really proud to say that there is a lot of integrative medicine research happening in MS. Nutrition research is booming. People are looking at telomere length and aging of the nervous system and how that relates to MS and disease progression. There's just, let's just say Pandora's box is open, and people are doing cool things. And it matters to me because those other medical comorbidities that we have research for, they're harmful to your brain too. MS is harmful to your brain. So is diabetes, so is high blood pressure, so is heart disease, so is not breathing at night and not wearing your CPAP. And your body has this innate capacity to heal itself. That's one of the other basic tenets of integrative medicine. And this type of work, incorporating all these parts of your lifestyle, helps you find that path to healing. So here's an example. Feeding your body healthy foods helps your blood sugar, helps your heart, helps your brain, probably improves fatigue, right? So if you sit around and eat, Cheetos and drink Mountain Dew all day and you have MS, guess whose modafinil is not going to work so good for you? If you're taking modafinil for fatigue, you can't upper your way out of that, right? That's not food for your body. So I talked a little bit about comorbidities. Again, why? This is why. A vascular comorbidity that occurs anytime in the course of MS can result in a progression of the EDSS score to 6 by 6 years sooner. That means you're always using an assistive device. A vascular comorbidity is diabetes, high cholesterol, hypertension, peripheral vascular disease, heart disease, stroke, overweight, obesity. One of those hastens your risk of disability. So I've talked about how integrative medicine is involved in those things from a research standpoint. Now we'll get into the nitty-gritty. Dr. Thrower talked about neuroplasticity. It's a general umbrella term that refers to the brain's ability to modify, change, and adapt its structure and function. It's influenced by things in your body and also things outside your body. Someone asked how you can look at it, I think, on an MRI, neuroreserve or neuroplasticity. Thanks. Yeah, Dr. Thrower said that you couldn't, but my argument would be that, well, if your brain looks good, then your neuroplasticity might be better, but that's not always true. There are things that we can't see. So these are the things, these factors that influence neuroplasticity. Mental challenge, meaning learning new things. Exercise. Exercise also causes neurogenesis, which is nerve cell growth in the brain. Nutrition, TLC, tender love and care, social interaction, and sleep. All of those things improve neuroplasticity. So does meditation. So from a brain health standpoint, we're talking about things that you can do not only to reduce your risk of worse MS, but also to reduce your risk of dementia. Most of the research in brain health comes from trying to prevent Alzheimer's disease. And we know that there's this great relationship between Alzheimer's disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity. In fact, they're calling it now diabetes type 3. And so we really, if we hone in on all the things that we've been taught for most of our lives about how to live healthy, we can also help our MS. So improving brain health not only improves your overall health, but it may have the potential to improve MS progression and symptoms. We know from several nutrition studies in MS that brain volume is greater when people eat healthier. Gray matter volume is greater when people eat healthier. So we assess brain health by looking at your MRI. We assess brain health by doing a history and physical when you come into the office. We look for changes. We ask you about changes, and we also ask you about other medical conditions. If a person comes into my office and they say, you know, I've been feeling really great, but I was just diagnosed with diabetes, a huge red flag goes up for me, because that diabetes is going to move your MS along faster. And so I want to work with you. I know I'm your neurology provider, I'm your MS nurse, but I want to work with you on how you can improve your diabetes, because it's going to make your MS calm down. So what else affects brain health? Smoking, dehydration, nutrient-poor diets, lack of exercise, stress, poor sleep, infections. These things directly or indirectly create stress in the body. This disrupts homeostasis. Homeostasis is just like things are copacetic. I'm sitting here, I'm having lunch, it's good, I'm enjoying my friends. There's no fire alarm going off. Nothing's happening in your body that's making you scared right now. These states cause fight or flight responses that don't go away. These fight or flight responses cause immune dysregulation that cause inflammation. And then what is primed to go awry in your body will do so. Dr. Thrower talked about Epstein-Barr happening at just the right time to just the right person. So I'm just the right person to have MS and don't. When I was 11, I had a horrible case of mono. It took me out of school for a month. The year after that, I had sinus surgery that was very, very serious. I was on oral antibiotics daily for 2 years. My mom had lupus. I grew up in a smoking household, and I grew up in Maryland. I don't have MS. yet. I don't have an autoimmune disease yet. I don't know why, by the grace of God, but everything in my life was happening for something to go awry. So I don't know what happened to me, except I got lucky. And up to this point, I've been lucky. But I have always tried to live a very healthy life. Dr. Thrower talked about MS in reserve. Keeping your pool full is the way I like to talk about it. He talked about stumps in a lake, which is, it's prettier. That's a very prettier analogy. But all these little icebergs under the surface are your MS lesions that don't show up until your pool starts to drain, like when you have an infection and your spasticity gets worse, or your fatigue gets worse, or your cognitive fog gets worse, or when you're hot and your vision grays out until you cool down. So you have to keep your pool full to keep all these symptoms underground, so to speak, or underwater. So I'm going to move through ways to do that according to helping your mind, helping your body, and helping your spirit. I made this graphic during COVID. It made a lot of sense to me. I felt like my life got so busy, like intolerably busy during COVID. And basically, I was running from the tiger all the time. So you guys were the same humans we were as we were when we were cave people. The same humans. However, our fight or flight nervous system was only supposed to activate when literally we were running from the tiger. We run from the tiger, we get back to the cave, he can't get in, everything's copacetic. Homeostasis, we're good. Until we have to run from another tiger or go look for food. Now, there's this guy down in the bottom right-hand corner. He runs from the tiger from 6 a.m. until midnight. And if he's lucky, he doesn't run from the tiger from midnight until 6 a.m., but he's probably not really lucky. He's probably tossing and turning all night and not getting good sleep. So this guy's running from the tiger 24 hours a day, and our bodies weren't built for that. So how can we take care of them? Well, we can nourish our mind. We can do things like making a manageable to-do list. We can do things like calling on support people when we need them. Oh my goodness, limiting news watching to X number of minutes per day, and definitely not before bed, definitely not before you want to go do something fun because it'll put you in a bad mood. Dealing with MS and our other health conditions, scheduling time for yourselves. And I know that, I'm not supposed to be asking people to raise hands, so I won't. It's just so hard for me not to talk to you guys. But having that support for your mind when you need it is so important. Managing your stress just goes along with managing things that are happening in your mind. Depression and anxiety are common in MS. Ways to manage stress or to think about whether or not it's disrupting your life, and if it is, to talk to a healthcare provider. Getting exercise, moving your body, getting outside, decreasing the use of things that amp you up, like stimulants like caffeine, sugar, and alcohol, increasing things that are healthy in your diet, and learning to say no, which is really, really hard. Keeping your MS at bay is also another way to manage your stress. Let's get this guy off of the steering wheel and into the trunk, right? You want to make sure that your symptoms are controlled, that you know what you need and when you need it. Hey, doc, when do I need blood work? How often are my MRIs going to be? Let's make sure my prescriptions are getting filled when I need them to be filled so I don't have to stress about that. Let's just write down all the things that we need to do so that I don't have to run from the tiger. Let's talk about your body. We're going to nourish your body. We're going to move your body. We're going to rest your body. And I'm so glad to see, speaking of body, that we're eating a healthy lunch today. So the first thing that I like to talk about is food. I love to eat. Nourishing your body is so important. This is my favorite book to tell people to get if they just are like, I have no idea where to start. I think it's $9.99. It's a tiny little book. It's kind of funny. It says things like, don't eat foods that are colors that foods shouldn't be when they grow, like things like that. And Michael Pollan, great author, his basic tenet is eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Doesn't mean you have to be vegan or vegetarian. It just means that you should eat mostly plants. Guess who else says that? Terry Wahls. Many of you know Terry Wahls. So she has the Wahls protocol. It's probably the most popular, most renowned diet for MS. And if you don't really read the book and really listen to her, you think she's telling you to eat a ton of meat, a ton of organ meat. No, she's telling you to eat 9 cups of vegetables a day, and 3 of them have to be sulfur rich, and 3 of them have to be brightly colored, and 3 of them have to be all kinds of greens. She's eating food. She's not eating a lot of it, and it's mostly plants. My basic tenet is the right diet for MS is the one that you're going to follow, right? Because if I told you to go be vegan and you want to have a steak once a week, you're going to be like, oh, that's funny, Megan. I'm just going to start eating steak every day, right? So the right diet for you is the one that you're going to follow. You should drink plenty of water every day, and then you should take a look at what you're eating. And if you're struggling with taking things out, then think about what you might put in. So, gosh, okay, I could take out soda. I could take out booze. I could take out sweet tea. I know that's a hard thing to ask, but it's about 150 to 300 calories a glass if it's sweet with sugar. And so instead of taking things out, maybe think, what can I put in? If I started my lunch every day with a green salad, if I started my dinner every day with a green salad, then maybe I wouldn't eat so much of the pasta or the butter-rich food or whatever it is. Can I put a handful of flax seeds in my oatmeal in the morning? Handful of chia seeds in my oatmeal in the morning, that sort of thing. And here's why. So this is a body, it could be your body. It's affected by the environment, stress, early adverse events, things that happened to you when you were a kid. We know without a doubt that early adverse events affect your medical health as you grow up. And the event has to be relevant only to you, not to the person next to you. So these things affect your HPA axis and your autonomic nervous system that cause floods of chemicals and neurotransmitters to enter your body, enter the circulation of your bloodstream, and modulate your immune system. Let your intestines be permeable or impermeable to things that shouldn't be there. Enhance your motility or shut it down. Lots of people that are stressed out are constipated, and equally as many have diarrhea. So there's no way to deny that this is happening. And then all these things that we put into our body, well, they either make this better or they make this worse. And then this environment in our gut, it tells our brain whether or not something's wrong. And then our brain sends more messages to our body. We need inflammation. We need trouble. Things are going awry here. And so that's the gut-brain connection. That's how it works. And this is why eating helps it. So receptors from foods high in fiber and omega-3s stimulate anti-inflammatory effects. Sodaflavonoids, which are bright-colored fruits and vegetables, chemicals in those things. Short-chain fatty acids made in the gut from high-fiber foods produce anti-inflammatory cytokines. Foods high in polyunsaturated fatty acids are also anti-inflammatory, and in animal models, there's evidence that they cause neuroprotection. Higher levels of intake of fruits and vegetables are associated with reduced relapses and disability in MS, and they know this from very large trials. Foods high in fiber from whole grains, fruits, and vegetables activate receptors that decrease the recruitment of inflammatory cells and protein in the brain and the body. Saturated fats are pro-inflammatory and increase inflammatory interferons. Long-chain fatty acids from processed foods, seed oils, foods high in omega-6s stimulate naive T cells to become pro-inflammatory. Saturated fats, same types of foods, and sugar increase your risk for vascular disease, and I already told you what that can do to your MS. So food really is medicine. So when someone says, well, what else can I do for my fatigue? Take a look at what you're putting into your body, into your head, into your mouth, and into your heart. Those things really matter. This is a chart I made that looked at most of the diets for MS just to show you how they overlap. Most of them limit processed foods. Many of them are gluten-free. Many of them have no to minimal red meat. With the exception of the ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting, because in my opinion, those things can give people license to just eat crappy, but only for 6 hours a day. And with the ketogenic diet, again, to eat very pro-inflammatory foods, but the ketosis causes a short-term benefit. So just a quick snapshot of all the different things that are out there. Quick move on supplements here. These are my opinions. People take too many supplements, period, end of story. People take too many supplements without guidance, period, end of story. Your doctor has no idea. When you ask your primary care doctor about lion's mane, he or she's probably like, ooh, and might remember to look that up on Instagram later and find something that was written by someone who doesn't have formal training in herbalism. So too many supplements can result in drug supplement disease interactions and or financial harm. So a lot of the things that people come into me with, man, they cost like $100 a month and there's no evidence that they help. If they help, that's amazing. Take it, spend the $100. But financial harm is a big thing to someone living with a chronic illness, on medication, having to go to physical therapy, having to see a counselor, all these things coming out of your pocket each month. One of the reasons I think people take too many supplements is because they take them and they dump them into a gut that can't absorb them because the gut's so mad. It's so angry, it can't absorb anything. So if you can healthy up your gut, you can have more benefit from taking a supplement or two. It's better to eat what you need, healthy up your gut, support the central nervous system, and then bring in what you might be deficient or insufficient in, or what might actually help assist a symptom. A safe supplement that alleviates a symptom can create an environment for healing. An example I like to give is magnesium. Magnesium's pretty safe for most people. It can help with sleep, with muscle spasm, with stress, with constipation. And if one of your biggest issues is constipation and you take a little magnesium and you start having regular bowel movements, you start feeling better. And a lot of things kick into gear from that. Probably safe supplements, vitamin D3, have your level measured. It's in my opinion, one of the adjunctive disease-modifying therapies for MS. Alpha lipoic acid or R-lipoic acid, magnesium, which I just talked about, B vitamins, which you can measure, and a good quality multivitamin or multimineral if you don't have a well-balanced diet. Individualized supplements should be probiotics. Not everybody needs one. And also if you're on an immunosuppressive therapy and you're really immunosuppressed, there have been well-documented cases of certain types of sepsis because of probiotics. So you just want to be careful. Talk to your doctor about it or your nurse practitioner, your PA. CBD. So Dr. Thrower gives great talks about medical cannabis. CBD is just CBD, no THC, except that which is allowable. According to how the FDA says you can make CBD. But again, not everybody needs it. But for many people, it is a good warm blanket for the nervous system, and it can help with things like anxiety, fatigue, and people say it helps with a lot of other things. In MS, it can help with spasticity, it can help with bladder function, it can help with nerve pain, and so can types of medical cannabis. But again, not everybody needs it. Adaptogens. So Stuart's going to get mad at me again. How many people know what ashwagandha is? Okay, I'm surprised. Okay, so about 5 people raised their hand. I live in Jacksonville Beach. People love supplements. Ashwagandha, I feel like might show up in Diet Coke very soon. It's an adaptogen. It's an old Ayurvedic herb that's been around probably since before Jesus. I'm not kidding. This thing's old. And it is a beautiful plant. It's a beautiful herb, and it is helpful for so many things. It's helpful for the thyroid, for the gut, for anxiety, but it is not helpful for everybody. I take ashwagandha for anxiety, and I'm up all night anxious. So it also can have interactions with drugs that are chemotherapeutic, like our B-cell depleting agents. So it can kind of counteract some of those effects. So Dr. Thrower, like he said, I have no problem with people trying these things, but you probably shouldn't be on it forever. So when I use adaptogens with a person, I choose them very carefully according to the symptom. Other adaptogens that you may have heard of are holy basil, eleuthero. Those are the ones that are coming to my mind right now, but you may not, might need to be on them for about 4 weeks and then take a break for the body to, learn how to use the benefits of them. So moving your body, I really just don't like the word exercise anymore. I think that over the years, and as I move closer to 50, when I hear exercise, I tend to want to just sit down. So I like to talk about moving your body. I've been a chronic exerciser most of my life, and now I just like to talk about moving your body. So what do you enjoy? And how can you make it into exercise? How can you make it beneficial for your heart? Your goal is 150 minutes a week, 21 minutes a day. That could be 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, according to your MS fatigue and what exercise, how it makes you feel. Same cardiovascular benefit. Move at your best time of day. Involve your friends and family if you need motivation. There are times when I know that I'm not going to be able to get in what I need to get in during the day in the way that I want to. I have a 6-year-old, so I'll be like, hey, buddy, let's go outside and play soccer. 20 minutes counts, right? Anything that you can do. Kick the ball. Throw the ball back. Throw something back and forth with someone you love in the house. Have someone move your arms and legs for 10 minutes twice a day. Make sure you're cooling. So make sure that you're drinking cool fluids or using cooling towels or a vest. Even if you're inside, Dr. Thrower said your core body temperature goes up 0.5 degree Celsius, nerve conduction slows down. It's cold right now. I'm sure at least one of you is going to touch someone today and get a shock. That little winter shock when you touch someone. That's because nerve conduction happens better when it's cold. And that's why when you're hot and you live with MS, most of you, the fatigue sets in. So use cooling equipment. Rest your body. It is so important to rest. Again, our nervous systems are on high alert all the time, and we need to teach them that they can sit down and nobody's going to come up behind them and get you. That's how the insides of our bodies live much of the time. So you got to teach them to rest. If you can't nap because you can't calm down and you need a nap, then sit down and read something calming. Sit down and take some deep breaths. Again, avoid the excessive use of caffeine, alcohol, sugar. If we're talking about sleep, it's important to not be on your device right before you go to sleep. That blue light messes with your pineal gland and your sleep hormones. Or wear blue light lenses, little glasses, or get a cover for your device. Many people use their devices to listen to meditation or music at night. I think that's great, but just use a blue light cover on it. Create a calming bedtime ritual. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. Maybe diffuse some lavender oil. Maybe have some decaf herbal tea if it's not going to get you up all night to pee-pee. And then finally, spirit. So I practice different types of, I call it energy healing, but I'm certified in clinical acupressure. I practice something called neuroemotional technique. I use heart rate variability biofeedback in my practice. And all of these things, in addition to what we know from their evidence for help, they also help your spirit. Start your day with a positive affirmation. Start your day with a prayer. Make time for that in your day. Use apps if you need to. Exercise your creativity. Like, get a box of crayons. Keep them on your kitchen table with a pad of paper. You never know what'll happen. Those adult coloring books are still the rage, and I think they're really fun. Bring flowers into the house. Bring color into the house. connect with loved ones, and do the things that you need to do to manage your soul. I really like this acronym. It's just STOP. So the S is stop. Stop what you're doing. The T is take a few deep breaths. The O is observe what you're feeling and name your emotions. And the P is proceed with what you need. And so I had to do that today in the airport. I came out of, I was very early. And I came out of the tunnel and the escalator in the airport, and I was looking around for the Uber sign, and I got kind of disoriented and got worried that I would be late. And so I literally just stopped because I could feel myself getting anxious, and I took a deep breath and I said, what do I need? Okay, I need to look at the signs. I need to look at my app and see how much time I, need to get to various places. I was like, all right, I got it. I moved on. So that's a good little acronym for when emotions get the best of you that I like to share. This is my son. He's the greatest. One of my mentors in my acupressure organization said, when you treat the spirit, you treat the whole being, right? So if you're comfortable with everything that you're doing in your life to help yourself heal, you will. You absolutely will. So in my opinion, integrative medicine is the practice that truly merges mind and spirit with the body. And that's what I have.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you guys for listening.
All right, so first here we go. What is energy medicine, and is it good for MS patients, especially since we suffer with fatigue?
That's it?
That's the question.
That's the question. Yeah, so energy medicine is are various modalities that claim to literally work with the body's energy systems, like Chinese meridians, the chakra system. We are energy. We have energy between us. The best way to explain it is how many, or like that. Okay, so can I do something? People at home are on Zoom. They can do this.
They're not on Zoom. They're on GoToWebinar.
Okay, on GoToWebinar. Sorry. You can do this. People at home, go get someone in your house. Bring them with you. Like, tell them to come over right now. All of you here, find a partner. Someone next to you, doesn't matter. Put up your hands. So if your partner, one hand of yours, you're like this. So your partner's hand is coming up close to yours, but it's not touching. Okay, so pull your hands about 6 inches away from each other, and then just start to get them really close, but they're not touching. But you can feel the heat, right? As they start to get a little bit closer. That's energy, right? So there's energy between us. There's energy in this room. You can walk into a room of people and be like, ooh, I don't want to be here, right? That's energy. So energy medicine is using that power that we have to help move things through the body. Energy medicine is, I'm walking around like this all day, my shoulders are up to here because all my tension's in my shoulders. It's having a massage, and suddenly, well, my shoulders feel better, but the next day your anxiety's better too. So it's modalities that help with both of those things.
Is that where Reiki comes in?
Reiki is energy medicine as well, yeah.
All right, I'm going to mention her name because she wants to say something to Megan. She's a fantastic peer. She's all over social media. Her first name begins with the letter C. Her name is Kathy Chester, and she just wants you to know how wonderful and what a blessing you are for all of us with MS.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, next, person's asking, what is the name of the little book that you mentioned again?
Oh, Food Rules by Michael Pollan, Pollan.
Okay, and the next thing is, you spoke about lion's mane,
yes.
And people are asking, how is that absorbed or taken into the body?
Oh, it's a mushroom, and so it's usually, you can buy the mushroom and make a tea with it. It's not a magical mushroom.
Right.
I mean, it is, but not like that. Or it's also sold in capsules. They dry it and sell it in capsules. So it's not
those psychedelic mushrooms?
It's not psilocybin.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's not a psychedelic, no.
Okay, so how do you feel about pro and pre gummy supplements?
Pro and prebiotics?
So
if you are not getting in prebiotic fiber and probiotics in your diet, I think it's good to take a pre and probiotic as long as your immune system's intact. So prebiotics are basically types of fiber that help your gut make those short chain fatty acids that cause anti-inflammatory effects. Pre and probiotics are often sold together now. The gummy? Yeah, okay. So twofold, the gummies, sometimes they have sugar. People are like, well, you're telling me to avoid sugar, and then you're telling me to take a bunch of gummies. It's a really small amount of sugar. Sometimes they have artificial sweeteners like xylitol, and they actually upset people's stomach. So I would just say, if you can find a reputable brand that you tolerate, the benefit of what's in the product is probably going to outweigh the 2 grams of sugar in the gummy. People do wonder about the consistency of the products in the gummies, but unless you're spending $1 million a month on supplements, there's going to be inconsistencies. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Hi. Vitamin. Hi. Okay. Pardon. Vitamin D.
Yes.
That is supposed to be good for persons with MS.
Yes.
Right? But you can take too much of that, and
yes.
it can cause difficulties
yes.
in your body. And who could determine? How do you determine?
Absolutely. So you just ask your doctor to measure your vitamin D 25 hydroxy level. It's a lab. You might be getting it drawn and just not knowing it. I will say that insurance has kind of discovered that we all like to order vitamin D levels these days because low vitamin D has been associated with many medical problems, and they don't like to pay for it a lot. So you just have to say, hey, doc, if you're going to order a vitamin D level for me, can you make sure you write in a diagnosis that covers it, like vitamin D deficiency? MS won't get it covered. If you have too much vitamin D and your liver and your kidneys aren't working well, it can hurt your liver and your kidneys. If you have too much vitamin D, it can also cause stones to form in your body. It can cause issues with your calcium levels and your parathyroid gland. Now, we're talking levels like upwards of 100, 150. So in MS, we like your level to be around 50. Okay.
Question, you had mentioned one, I think it was a vitamin to lower blood sugar. Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah. So I was talking about possible adverse effects of lion's mane mushroom. It can cause your blood sugar to be lower. It's not used specifically to lower blood sugar.
So in the vein of the complementary and integrative type medicines and energy, there's a concept called grounding,
Yes.
where you make direct contact with the earth, and supposedly there's some free radicals and stuff that gets neutralized. What are your thoughts on that or experience that you've seen with that?
So I'll give you my woo-woo answer. So grounding is basically walking barefoot on the grass, on the sand, and that contact with the earth. So I practice Chinese medicine. I do acupressure. It's fingertip acupuncture, so no needles. So 5,000 years ago, we didn't have tests about free radicals, right? We just knew that walking on the ground helped people who were flighty and anxious to calm down. Why? Well, probably because it's changing some sort of metaphysical balance in the body. We'll call it free radicals. Calming people down diminishes inflammation downstream. Calming people down stops them from running from the tiger. So I'm a big believer in that. I do think that any time you spent outside doing anything is wonderful, but I would also challenge you, not today because it's freezing, but as it starts to warm up, to get outside and put your feet on the earth. I wish I could show you guys a funny picture. I had to take a very hard oral and written exam about 3 weeks ago. And I felt all over the place. I'd been studying for 4 days, and it was like I said, oral and written. And I came out of the written exam and I just fell on the grass face down, and I just sat there. I was like, I can get sucked under. It would feel good right now. So there's something about being close to the earth, right? and it's helpful. I think it's important.
Okay, question from online. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Question from online. What do you feel are the 10 most needed herbs, vitamins, supplements, whatever, for the MS community?
10.
10.
I don't feel about 10.
Okay. What do you feel about?
I feel about,
let's cut this back to 5 then.
Yeah, can I go backwards? Vitamin D3, once your level's measured. Alpha lipoic acid, 600 milligrams a day, as long as your kidney functions normal. Magnesium, B vitamins, which you can also measure, B12 and folate being the most important. And I would say I'm going to throw an omega-3 fatty acid in there. And then if your diet isn't well balanced because of various challenges, a good quality multivitamin and multimineral.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can you take too much magnesium?
Yeah, you'll have diarrhea. You'll know. Okay, so starting with magnesium, I would start with 250. If you tolerate that okay, you can go up to 500. You'll get a gurgly stomach or have diarrhea if 500's too much. We don't usually recommend going over 500, so that's a good question. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
With B12, can you take too much of it?
So B12 is a vitamin that if you take too much of it, you will just urinate it out. It can't hurt you. Like vitamin D is fat soluble, so it can stick in your body. Vitamin B12 is water soluble, so it comes out. You can have a high B12 level, but it shouldn't hurt you. It just means you don't need as much.
All right, last question from online. I'll have to say her name. It's from Carol because she also says thank you for everything. But she's asking about CoQ10.
CoQ10 is a great antioxidant. Most of the evidence that we have for CoQ10 is for heart health, but there is some evidence that it might be helpful for brain health as well. Not specific to MS, but for brain health in general. Dementia.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for flying on up.
Thanks, Stuart.
Have a great day, everybody, and drive carefully. Be well. Thank you.